you didn't know any better, what kind of business or operation would this be? A system that has no controls, with no effective testing for accuracy. Decisions are irrational, arbitrary, and capricious. Imperious and arrogant is a theme of their operation. Assets can be depleted and confiscated by biased decisions without just cause. What could this possibly be? Could it be the IRS? It's certainly some poorly run business. But no, it is our family court system, because this is exactly what happens to you when you go into family court. And for the following interview on FIT TV is its cause. And I have with me on my immediate left, Gary Jacobs, legal reformer, and in his left, Anthony Pappas, professor at St. John's University, who's had some of these things happen to him. Anthony, if you don't mind just giving us a quick rundown on what it is that happened to you. How would you describe it so I can set the pace for the show?
Well, it was basically a life-threatening situation, or it's a life-threatening situation. You go into court expecting justice, and instead you just encounter injustice and unfairness. It doesn't make sense. You're helpless. You can't do anything about it. Many people despair over the process. They commit suicide or despair and do other things.
Lose children and,
yes.
lose
So it's a horrible situation. It's completely antithetical to any ideals of our nation or the conception that people have about what the justice system should be.
That's what I tried to say in the opening, in a way. I mean, I'm not sure it caught on, but basically the system is not a legitimate one if it's set up to confiscate that which they are trying to preside over.
Right, it doesn't achieve any...
It's not achieving any goal or anything.
That's right, and it sets up procedures and justifications for doing exactly the opposite and punishing innocent people and just causing needless suffering by adhering to processes and an adversarial system which just is guaranteed to
I'm not even sure you can
suffering.
call that a process. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's not really if it's a process, it's a process meant to harm. It's not doing anybody any good.
Right. It's not a civilized process. It's not a humane process. It's just going on in a barbaric way, harming people. No one takes responsibility over it, even though they should be aware of all the tragedies that it causes and all the suffering that results.
And they're clearly not. Would you agree, Gary? They're clearly not aware.
I agree, and I think for the viewers who didn't see the first show, this is a follow-up show. This is what should have been a simple divorce case. Really, when you think about it, it really shouldn't have even gone to court because it was a long-term marriage. The children were older. Mr. Pappas is a professor. He has a job. He's got a W-2. It should be very simple. We split the assets 50-50. They were very responsible. They took care of their children. They put their children through college. They should split their assets and go on with their life. And,
done, period.
And be done with it.
You'd make a nice mediation client.
Right. Exactly. And what this did was the courts turned this into somebody who was a productive member of society.
Right.
Turned him into now where he's facing criminal actions. He's lost not only his life savings, but probably his children's life savings. For what?
What exactly would, how old are the kids? Let me go back a second.
They're all in
young
their,
adults now, right?
Yes, they're all in their 20s.
I remember they were young. Now,
right.
Do they have any kind of response to this kind of?
Well, it's hard for the children to respond to it. Sometimes, they want to remain neutral, or they don't have the maturity to respond. It's really the case that sometimes even older people or judges even don't have the requisite maturity to deal with the issue in a sensible fashion.
In a system like that, there's no sensibility. But you may remember, I now remember something we talked about last time, that if in a few years that the maturity will develop, and you should be out of harm's way with your children.
But,
however, will you have anything left?
Right.
Will you be still standing at that point? I don't know.
What did what has this done to you psychologically and to your psyche? And part two is, even though your children are trying to remain neutral, they see their parents, or especially their father, going through what I would imagine is pain. How has this affected your outlook on life?
Your day-to-day ability to continue in the fashion you were continuing on?
Well, it's very hard, and that's why I say that many people despair and take their own lives or do some other bizarre actions. What is helping me is I understand that I'm fighting an evil system, so it's not something that I am causing or contributing to.
But yeah, if you really feel that way, you'll save yourself some mental illness.
Correct, but it's still there. You're always apprehensive that something could arrive in the mail, or you'll get a notice from your attorney, or someone could knock on the door.
People don't recognize how frightful a simple letter in the mail from the court can be.
And you see, in this situation, you see a police car drive by, or a sheriff. You never look at them the same way, as you did before. But I think, one of the things that you're doing, which is what Chris and I have both done, is focus your anxiety or this energy into exposing the injustices throughout the system, and not just you've mentioned your judge by name, which Chris and I do all the time.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. You're mentioning facts, and you mentioned one judge that you've had an issue with, and I think it comes down to the problem of judicial immunity, that they have this absolute immunity, and they can do whatever they want. In your case, you feel like the judge, for some reason, had it in for you, and is just making unfair decisions, or do you think the law is stacked against you?
I definitely feel the judge evolved a belief system that justified her persecuting an innocent man. So you're facing somebody that's the equivalent of the Nazis. That
it sounds she was like she was impenetrably arrogant.
Absolutely. So Judge Zimmerman, as I say, she just evolves a belief system, and she can do whatever she wants, and she's not concerned about the appellate courts or justice. She just can be arbitrary and capricious.
Well, in that system, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, you probably help me out with this one, but when you hire a lawyer, you're hiring him or her to zealously protect you. Now, the other side, of course, has the same thing. My question to you would be, if that's the place where you have to combat against the other side, and the events are not going well, you're heading in a downward trend, would it have been possible to reverse any of that, or stop it, or get out, or cut your losses at any point?
Well, in order to do that, you would have needed the cooperation of the other side, but where the opposing side feels that the...
Maybe, I guess you're right.
Do you think you were outlawed? I mean, obviously you had a lawyer defending you. I think what Chris is saying, sometimes when we're in court, the lawyer doesn't mesh with the judge or the other attorney, and we need to... Do we get rid of an attorney, and we switch attorneys? It happens all the time.
You wanted to do that to the judge. You wanted to get rid of her,
right? It's not so easy to do that, unfortunately. But do you think you were outlawyered, and that's why you were portrayed to be this devil?
At least at some point.
No, I feel my attorneys provided reasonable representation. They weren't ready to, storm the barricades and proclaim, the judges are biased or the whole system is broken. But, within the parameters of what would be normal representation, they provided that. But where the system is broken and the judge is biased, it really becomes irrelevant, whatever.
But doesn't that point to the fact that the hired person that you hired to represent you completely fell down on the job? Now, I'm not saying he did, because you're not saying that. You're saying the opposite. But if those kinds of abuses could occur, that lawyer didn't have the ability to defend you. He didn't have the ability to take care of you because you were unjustly dealt with. Without question.
The system doesn't provide the ability to deal with the abuses. People are complaining about it all the time.
Yeah.
They have crazy rules like
you wanted to get out and you couldn't.
Right. You can't get out. You're trapped. Whatever the lawyer can do is not going to work. He can file appeals. He can make motions.
See, Gary, that's the problem. I mean, you can hire a
nothing-
million
nothing-
attorneys. Would it have
nothing
made any
works.
difference with that judge, or would it have made any difference at all?
Well, at the end of the day, I think what would have made a difference is if they had no money to fight about.
Yeah.
There was no money for the lawyers to keep going, but what I see happen in this case is they seem to be setting him up to be in contempt.
Sure.
You know,
Which
they
is
set
when
him up
they
to
can confiscate funds. Right.
take that, possibly go to jail. They freeze bank accounts.
See, this is what it's really
For
all
what?
about.
It's
really
about the
all
money.
That's right. It's really only about what can they get. Now,
Right.
I mean, there's no. You ask me, looking at your case, what is it that they tried to do? Nothing else but take your money.
Right.
Absolutely, and the children's money as well.
Yeah, they confiscated your future.
But you have no
Absolutely.
money. I mean, you spent so much money on it. I mean, you could say what you spent. I mean, it's close to $1 million in legal fees. So someone would look at it and say, "Wow, Anthony, you lost your case." Did your wife? I don't see that your wife won. Your ex-wife, because she would have had half of that $1 million.
Well,
Do you think she thinks she won this?
yes,
That's a good point. We don't often look at that, but the winning and the losing could be all in the lawyer's hands.
Right.
No, she will win because she will wind up with some large positive amount, and I could wind up with a zero or a negative amount, and be indebted.
Well, what comprises the positive amount that she received? Where did that come? What is that? Not the dollar amount, but where did it come from?
It can come from any capricious calculation that
In your
the
case, yeah.
judge can do. All right, so
No, the beneficial reward that you're indicating she received. Where did that come? Where did the reward come
all right,
from?
I'll give you an example. When the children were born or very young, one could set aside $10,000 a year in custodial accounts for their benefit.
Right.
So gradually with the time, if you're doing this for 3 children and you have the passage of 20 to 25 years, you reach a sum of close to $1 million. So it's a combination of custodial accounts or a trust that their grandmother, my mother, set up for them. So you have $1 million available for the children. The judge can now proclaim that all of that belongs to your ex-wife, even though you can demonstrate that you used it for the college education of 3 children.
His case is
and
the wild,
you,
wild west.
And you turned over hundreds of thousands of dollars to your children, or they still exist. So you effectively don't have the $1 million, but she says there's a judgment against you that you are obligated to provide $1 million to your wife. And this is just one factor. She can go on to other issues.
Right, so her
and
reward
reach
was
this-
to have the money that would have ordinarily been for the kids, and now she has the domain over.
I think the money was gone.
The
He spent
money
for the
is
kids.
gone. So it's really like imaginary money, but you're entitled to, you're required or ordered to make it up. So now how would you make it up? Well, if you can't, I don't know, maybe you go, you're held in contempt. They could accuse you of concealing
that's
assets
crazy.
or not coming up with the judgment.
It's crazy.
Or they can levy all your future income indefinitely until you come up with it. Or they can do something else, like for example, you may have inherited some property from your parents, which is clearly your separate
It's not
property.
a separate property in
Right.
most cases,
And now
unless
they
it was
would
acquired.
say-
Unless it was acquired during the marriage,
Right.
and then it's percentaged out.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
But they could say, for this imaginary $1 million that no longer exists and that your wife is entitled to, she can take your separate property and apply it towards that. So you, even when you lose that, you still owe her money, and you're left penniless and homeless, and you're just totally abused. because the judge can do whatever calculation she wants and come up with any numbers that she can compute. And you can't fight it unless you have the funds and the wherewithal and the ability to take appeals and to keep on fighting this broken
I would love to have
system
seen that
for years.
decision. That decision was more than one decision, though, against you, right? It was several, right?
There were many decisions along the way, even where they included total hallucinations. The judges kept on making them. So this April, there was another shooting at Fort Hood where soldiers were killed. So like 5 years ago, the judges write, I made thinly veiled threats in the idiom used by the perpetrator of the Fort Hood massacre. Now, anyone has to realize that's totally irrational and nonsense, because the FBI and Homeland Security is not going to leave you walking around if you made threats. And these threats were reported to the Judicial Threats Unit in the Office
Judicial
of
Threats
Court
Unit.
Administration.
They must be busy.
You mean the Office of Court Administration?
Yeah. So it's reported to the Office of Court Administration. They don't do anything. The FBI doesn't do anything. The New York Police Department doesn't do anything on account of these threats like the guy at Fort Hood. But the judges keep writing whatever the nonsense they want. Then they keep on writing that you committed a violent Class B felony where you should be in Attica State Prison for up to 25 years.
What was that?
I punched my wife, fractured her face. She had reconstructive surgery with anesthesia, and she charged it on a credit card, and it cost about $8,000. So you go to the district attorney and say, this is what the judges wrote. The district attorney concludes, this never happened, otherwise I would indict and prosecute you. And you should be going through a criminal trial.
You're in a divorce, though. It's not even.
It didn't happen, right?
Right, absolutely. As I say, you should be indicted and prosecuted for a Class B felony, which is punishable by up to 25 years.
We always say that if you have that kind of incident, that whatever you're deciding upon has to stop until the criminal aspects are covered. We've said that before.
But I don't think they didn't bring a criminal case. This is a judge in the context of a divorce, bringing up other issues, and it sounds like she's trying to justify her decisions against him. As far as even
does
the
that
money,
work for you?
To me, it's a separate. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I would think our lawyer should have objected. His lawyer should have objected to that. But even as far as it sounds like what they're doing is, which you and I complain about often, is they're imputing income to him.
Right.
They're imputing money to him that he doesn't actually have.
Right.
Which is what they do, especially in this economy, when a lot of people are making less money than they did. Maybe they lost their job.
It should be illegal to impute income.
And the judge will say, well, we're imputing it. You should be making X, Y, Z. I mean, what happens if you're a volunteer? I mean, Mother Teresa, should she have been out there making thousands of dollars a month, but she was volunteer? To impute is not, this is America. You should have the right to do what you want. And if you were married, you would do what you wanted to do.
Right, and this charge about a felony, it resulted from perjury on the part of my wife. So it's obvious that it's perjury, and Judge Zimmerman refuses to consider it as perjury.
They won't do that, right?
But you can go after her civilly. Are you going after her civilly for perjury?
I'm appealing the perjury decision to the appellate division, so I don't know what'll happen there.
That one probably won't go.
No.
And
because they won't prosecute perjury.
But it sounds to me like you're fighting the system through the appellate divisions. Have you considered the other route and going after your ex-wife for perjury, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, for malicious prosecution, filing false reports, frivolous motions, at least to try to turn the tide so you're always on the defense, it seems like. Have you thought about going that direction?
I have a separate federal civil rights lawsuit where I try to bring up these issues. So that's been filed by me pro se.
Is that like a class action? Is that going to go above your case? Is that against the system?
No,
It's going to involve you.
It just involves my
Okay.
situation.
Is that against your ex-wife or against the court, the county?
It's against 3 judges, my ex-wife and
Okay,
her
so she's
attorney.
our party
Right.
to the, and we all vote, Chris and I know, I mean, really, your final recourse should be to go to federal court when your civil rights are violated. Unfortunately, the first thing they do is file a motion to dismiss, and that court is very fast to dismiss cases, especially pro se cases, because basically you're costing their system, which feeds them, money.
And they do everything they can
They
to
do
keep everything at the state level, too.
In fact, they have attorneys afraid to
Yeah.
file them because they're afraid of sanctions if they don't go the way they thought. But I commend him for for at least fighting back and trying to change the system, exposing the system, doing shows like yours.
We wish that you didn't have to go through this, but now that you're here, I mean, we both had to suffer the same type of thing. That we become advocates is not much of a reward.
I mean, unfortunately, these motions that you're filing and appeals, they have to be costing you a fortune.
Well, they are. The one I'm doing pro se is
Not, but
time consuming. It takes a lot out of
try
your
to do it their
life.
way. You're talking about doing it their way. That's it.
Right.
I know, that's tough.
Again, I commend you for informing the public about these issues because it's antithetical to American democracy and any concept of justice. And the public needs to be informed so changes can be made.
Well, you're a smart guy. You're a professor. You know, you're not just you're not an educated person. Not that this deserves to happen to anybody, but you're an educated person. And now, like, you've done a lot of research and got an education. Was there anything that you would do different? And part 2 to that is, what do you think needs to change to fix this system? Besides, Chris and I think the whole system should be thrown out like they did in Scandinavia.
Trash.
They threw out the whole family court system.
Sure, they did that in New Zealand and Australia.
Oh,
also.
did they too? Yeah, I mean, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, threw out the whole family
Everybody
law
has to
system.
mediate. That's it.
Right.
I would endorse that. I think it's very difficult to change the system. There are too many interests that want it to continue. And small modifications won't accomplish much.
Right.
It has to be eradicated,
Right.
Tooth and nail, and replaced by a whole system from the ground up.
But where is this going to end up? I mean, we spoke about 6 months ago, and now we're getting. Where is this going to end? Where do you see this? What's the end game? Where do you see it ending? You're saying you have judgments that you can't pay.
I think he's in the hope stage.
You're in the hope, but where do you? I mean, you must think about this because we think about our cases all the time.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is going? What do you think the end game is to this?
Well, I'm somewhat hopeful that I'll find a measure of justice in the United States District Court because the case is still alive there, and after that, again. One has to defy the system, or again, if you run out of funds, I don't know what they would do. They could, as I say, levy your future income indefinitely until...
I don't have the
that's
answer.
some incentive to go to work, huh?
Yeah, really. I mean, what would you be working for?
Well, again, you'd have to see what they would do. So again, you could wind up homeless or penniless. You could consider civil disobedience. It's just a terrifying situation.
We've come to the conclusion many times that the only thing that will work is en masse, civil disobedience en masse. But we can't get enough people to stand like we did in the 60s when we were trying to get abortion passed.
I'm just afraid that this, as you've had a lot of guests on your show, goes the way of the only end game, which is not even an end game, but they're not happy till you're penniless, homeless, and then they put you in jail because he's grist for the mill.
Right.
He's feeding this whole system.
Sure.
Part of the system is keeping our jails filled up. We're just
Right.
always looking to build more jails. We're not looking to keep people, and they love putting people in jail in divorce
The
cases.
revolt has some kind of revolt is happening actually in a small underground way, but people like us are trying to establish that there's such tremendous wrongs, like in his case.
I think what they do is when they see something like this, they go, "This guy must be crazy. This would never happen in America."
Yeah, the junkie public will have a tough time believing you.
I understand that. That's why more education, more information, more agitation, demonstrations, protests. These have to continue.
They have to keep going.
And another reason it's important having Anthony on the show is being a professor. I think it's harder for people to say, this guy's crazy, because he has a job with the university.
Sure.
He's in charge of educating our
We've had
children.
plenty of doctors and plenty of lawyers have been beat up too.
People tend to listen a little bit more to doctors and lawyers than they do, or professionals.
It's a shame that they have to have that kind of credibility, but but you notice that not too much is changing.
Right. Unfortunately, you're right.
If we had 150 people in this county, we could probably perform like you. We probably could come up with it. 50 to 100 people come to think of it. We should get them to protest against the court right away. And you can all do it on your own.
People, I think, when they're out of it emotionally, you're just so drained that you don't want to relive it. You just want to move on.
We're in the last minute here, so let's see if there's anything you have that you want to say in this last minute.
Well, this is the greatest threat to the well-being of Americans that exists today.
Right, I don't know one that's bigger.
There's nothing bigger. The suicides are approaching
We've heard
the
numbers,
level
300 a month.
Of automobile accidents or...
Is it really? I'd like to know those statistics.
Well, again, it varies, and...
That's okay. I mean, who cares whether it's
and what's attributable
29
to,
or 500? I want to know those
divorce.
statistics, because it's all part of this whole process.
We've heard as much as 300 people a month commit suicide who are involved in a divorce.
That's incredible. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much, Gary Jacobs and Anthony Pappas, and I hope you can end this thing before much longer. But I think your attitude is good. I think you're going to make it. Is that good?
I hope so.
Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was the cornerstone of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own. That's why we do this show, right? Where are you going to get this information on our own? And hopefully, we'll bring it to your TV every single week. My name is Dimaggio, and I thank you very much for watching FIT TV. We'll see you again next week.